Representative Eddie Morales, Mayor Diana Murillo, Representative Claudia Ordaz, Representative Lina Ortega,
Present.
Norma Palacios,
Here.
Mayor Perea,
Here.
Mayor Rachel Quintana,
Here.
Mayor Isela Reyes,
Good morning. Here.
Sam Rodriguez, Representative Isabel Salcido, Commissioner Manuel Sanchez, Ellen Smythe, Mayor Anthony Turner, Tomas Trevino, and City Manager Carrie Weston. So we do have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. What we're going to do today is we're going to take all the action items first. So we'll skip around a little bit so we don't lose quorum. So if you want to get started, sir.
All right. So discussion and action to consider approval of the minutes of the May 19th, 2023 TPB meeting.
Mr. Chair. Second. Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
So item number 2 is to consider authorizing the executive director to submit a partial funding proposal for the Downtown 10 project to the Texas Transportation Commission. If we can put the table up. There we go. So if you recall, a year ago, we did something similar. We are submitting a proposal to the commission to add some local funds, what is considered part of the local contribution for the project, in the amount of $24.9 million. It's very far away from what we did last year, where we the board approved to submit $150 million. But again, because of all the issues that we've been having with inflation, combined with the good news that, yeah, there's a lot more money on the table coming in from the federal programs, and at the state level, the state sources also increased. However, the impact of inflation on the projects that are currently programmed has been brutal. So that additional funds have been going mostly to projects that are already programmed, both on-system TxDOT projects, but also the local government projects that we have programmed for the city of El Paso, for Horizon City and the county. So in working with the district, with Tomas and staff, we were able to find 21 million of a category 4, which is a category that can only be used on system. And then category 7, which is the one that we use for local governments, we were able to find $3.9 million. So that's the total of 24.9. So the idea procedurally, or the mechanics of this, we submit this proposal to the commission, and hoping that the commission will look at it and will see it and provide us more category 12 funds, match it, or whatever the amount is. As you know, the fiscal year 24 UTP is is in the final phases of development. The draft UTP is going to be presented to the commission next week at the commission meeting. And then it's going to start a public involvement period, public comment, that starts, I believe, July the 7th, and it goes through the August the 7th, or around that time. Based on comments and whatever, there's still opportunities to adjust the draft and so on. The final version of the UTP will be approved by the commission in the August meeting. So there's still some time for adjustment. So I think we're in good shape. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Representative Pauline, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor.
Everybody be a representative today.
Eduardo, so just to be clear, these are additional funds that were identified. They're not funds that are being redirected from any other projects.
Correct. So again, in the 24 UTP, more funds were provided, well, at the state level, and also provided to each district and MPOs. So most of that additional funding went to projects that are already programmed, right? So, this is the balance that working with the district, that we're able to find for that. It's not a lot, but I think it's also very important for us to show the commission that, we're trying. And, we definitely, are trying, and I think it's, in my personal opinion, it's a lot of value to tell them, we're turning every stone and trying really hard to find, some local skin in the game.
Any commitment yet that, from, based on our proposal? Has the commitment been made?
No. There's no commitment. And again, this is a proposal, right? So we are not
I'm
programming.
talking about from the state and federal government. Have they committed to any funding to help us?
Not yet. I mean, that's what we're waiting for,
Okay.
for the commission to provide more funding for this, reacting to our proposal here.
What's the total amount required to be able to do the project?
So the estimate right now, and Tomas, if you, well,
It's currently 750,
How much?
750.
Okay, so 600 minus 25, so now you're 575 away.
No,
Then
because
we committed 150.
we committed 150 and they matched our 150, so we're at
That's the question I asked, and you said there was no commitment yet.
There was a commitment last year. There was a commitment last year for 150 from them. So we're at 305 right now.
Okay, okay,
So-
that's what was my
I
question.
misspoke, yeah. I mean, they have committed 155 million. So right now, the funding as it stands today, we have about $305 million out of the 750. So,
Okay, thank you. Mayor Miller?
And the technical committee has considered this also, right?
correct.
Okay. So,
Right, yeah. And actually, the 3.9 million was really the balance that came up after the TPAC, the technical committee. They appointed an ad hoc committee that looked at how to program that additional funding in categories 5 and 7. So initially, we were hoping to reserve a little bit more in category 7, but as we worked and provided the funds to the projects that are already programmed and so on, the 21 million shrunk to 3.9. So
Representative Canales?
Realistically, based on what we're seeing in the state, what is the amount that we can, or what is a range, I guess, that we can realistically expect? Is a match probably the most that we'll get from this? Do we anticipate that it could be more than a match?
I mean, it really is up to the commission. The sort of like can I call it the unofficial policy, or what we've been told and what they've been doing for several of these big ticket projects, is that they would match, dollar to dollar. In other words, so that 50% of the cost of the project would be funded with category 12, which is a discretionary category for them. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we're pledging 24.9 and for them to, match it with another 24.9 or in that ballpark. But again, there's no rule, no guarantee.
Thank you. Representative Ortega?
We expect that there will be a draft UTP that will be released at the next meeting next week. And kind of like what our director said, there is no guarantee with regard to the amount of monies that they are placing in the draft. The draft can always change. It could always be reduced. It could be increased. There will be time for public comment. And as Mr. Codwell pointed out, the actual final UTP will not be adopted by the commission until August. But it's always incredibly helpful to show that the district itself is putting together, setting aside monies for continuing on this project. It is the biggest project that we've ever had in this community. It's a huge sum, and you don't expect that the full amount is ever going to be funded at one shot, but you expect that they know that the dates with regard to the letting, and so they know how much needs to be allocated in order to stay on track. So we are very hopeful that there will be a significant, hopefully, amount of monies that they will release when they give us the draft next week.
Thank you for that update. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, if I could also add, what is important is that we continue making progress on the funding side, but also on the project development activities. And so, Tomas and the Raul and the rest of the TxDOT team, they're working hard to continue, advancing on the development activity. So I think it's fair to say that as we get closer, let's say, for example, a major step is clearing the environmental document. Once we take that big step, then the project looks more real, right? And we can, if not put more pressure, but it looks more feasible. And so we still have, two more shots, two more UTP cycles to get this done. So again, it's important, even though this doesn't sound like a lot of money, but we're making a little bit of progress. But I think it's important not to lose the momentum.
Not a lot of money.
I was just going to say, really?
Well,
I wish maybe I'm in the wrong field.
Well, I don't have it in my wallet, so.
Oh, okay. How accurate is the proposal, being that it's been over a year now since we've had that discussion or so? And as time continues to extend, how accurate will be on the proposal to do the project? Go ahead,
So
sir.
are you talking about estimate?
Mhm.
So the 750 was based on a preliminary concept. We'll refine the estimate once we have a preferred alternative, and that's part of the NEPA process. So we'll probably look at refining it here in '24, once that preferred alternative is selected.
And then I guess we'll get a report back to this body. Great. Thank you for that. Do we have a motion?
Actually, one more question, sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
So, yeah, I fully understand the commitment of the Category 4 fund, because those have to be used on system. I want to make sure I fully understand the alternatives for the Category 7 funds. We have this balance of 3.9 million. If that were to not be used here, what would be the alternate future for that 3.9 million? Does that get, rolled back into Category 7 funds that the MPO can allocate later?
If we don't use them for this project, yeah, absolutely. They go back to the pot.
Okay, and those, again, that's local projects,
Correct.
used for any local projects. Okay. Yeah, again, I have a little bit of, it's a smaller amount, clearly the smaller amount of the two buckets here, but I have a little bit of heartburn taking money from projects that could be done in the shorter term here locally, or that could be funded in the shorter term here locally, and tying them up here when it's not necessarily a sure thing that we get.
Well, let me address that. When we work with the ad hoc committee and TPAC, we looked at projects and programs as far as 2027, so beyond the tip years. So we are not delaying any projects that are already being planned, right? So that's I think the committee was very careful in doing that. So it's not just funding the projects that are currently in the tip, which is 4 years, right? So we went further. The city had some projects, the county had some projects, and those were where they're not formally programmed in the tip yet because they're beyond the 4 years, but they have a slot within the next 6-7 years. So really, realistically, we're not taking any funding away from projects that are in the pipeline. So hopefully that gives you a little peace of mind.
It does. I just think that, even existing projects there's no, I think existing projects could benefit from a $3.9 million enhancement here or there. Again, we're talking about projects into the future. It does help. Your explanation does help. But I'm still just wary of allocating the local dollars for this project where ultimately, this is a very large state project.
And again, this is a proposal that is being made, today, as we move forward and we continue working on the funding formula, to get the project fully funded. Many things can happen. I know it's a lot of money, right? But 3.9 out of 750 or 800 or whatever the new estimate goes up to be, it's not a lot. It's not going to make or break. But I think at this point, it's a really, I think it's a good, show of good faith from our end.
Chair, if I may just be, so you are aware, we have someone who signed up for public comment on this item. So before you open the motion for a vote.
Great, we have Mayor Miller.
Go ahead and have your public comment.
Public comment? Yes, sir, go ahead.
So we have Mr. Bob Storch.
That's correct.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Bob Storch. I live in Sunset Heights. And as you all know, I'm opposed to this project. And I would encourage you not to do this at this time. For one, the project is ill-conceived from the beginning. It will never accomplish what they want to accomplish or what they say they want to accomplish, because widening a road is not going to stop congestion or help congestion. There are alternative routes already for incident management. We've got a brand new freeway, this Border West Highway, plus you've got Paisano in Montana. And if it's not up to standards, let's build a new road to those standards around the city that will accommodate all those trucks and hazardous materials that are now right going through the heart of our city. We don't need this. The road is not congested. Listen to your morning traffic reports. Downtown segment of I-10 is hardly ever on that congestion. It's always over on the east side or the west side. So and if you put this 25 million in, if they match it, we're still not even halfway to the 750 million that they say it's going to cost. And that was a pre-COVID estimate. It's going to go way above that. It's a flawed design. It will be detrimental to the quality of life in central El Paso. It will not do anything to increase economic development other than providing jobs for the people who are going to build this thing. And it's going to be a boondoggle, and it's going to continue to be an albatross and a detriment to downtown El Paso. Don't do this. We don't even know what the road is. They haven't submitted their final design. So don't help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone now signed up for this item?
No, Chair.
Thank you. All right, with that, Mayor Miller?
I need to say something about process here. We started with what, $21 million, you said, that you wanted for this project, and you went through our process of our technical committee. I learned a long time ago that there's a lot of people a lot smarter than I am that vet these things, and that's why we set these processes up. So the fact that you had asked for 5 times of what you got, went through our process, and the folks that do this for a living came up with this figure. I feel like that we need to support that process. It's worked for us before with spreading out the available funding. And so with that, I would say we need to support what our technical staff has done.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Eduardo, I certainly understand the concern from the public, but I have to reiterate the city of El Paso's commitment to this project. We've put forward resolutions that were approved and presented to this body, so the city stands behind this project and these proposals. In addition to that, it is absolutely critical that we widen I-10 specifically at this chokehold in downtown. We have seen commerce essentially stop, transportation be completely at a standstill on the freeway because of what you're experiencing here in downtown. I take this route daily, so I have seen times where we can't get out. Visitors who are passing through El Paso through I-10 can't get out. And so having all of these alternative routes in addition to the widening and the vision, the long-term vision for this project is absolutely critical. The alternative is to do nothing, and that's not acceptable. So I'm happy to support this today. Thank you.
Thank you. And, I've said it and I'll say it again, that if it does not impact the local taxpayers, I'll continue to look at it. The minute it starts impacting the local taxpayer and it puts a burden on them, I will not be in support. But with that, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 2. All in favor?
Yes.
All opposed? No. Ayes, got it. Motion passes. Item number 3.
All right. Item number 3 is to consider approval of amendments to the Regional Mobility Strategy 2050 MTP and RMS 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program Tip 2A, amend the SH 178 Operational Improvements Project to add Category 2M and Category 11 Rider 11B funds in fiscal year 2024. B, amend the I-10 Frontage Road Extension Phase 1 Executive to Sundom Park Project to add Category 2 funds in fiscal year 2025. C, amend the US 62180 Montana Avenue Expressway and Frontage Roads Phase 2 project to add Category 2 funds in fiscal year 2026. D, program the IH-20 widening New Mexico State Line Spur 37 project using Category 2M and Category 4U funds in fiscal year 2025. And E, program the US 54 Patriot Freeway main lanes, Kenworthy to FM 2529, and ramp reconfiguration project using Category 2M funds in fiscal year 2026.
Any questions?
And just for a little bit of background, these funds that we're programming here are for projects that are already programmed and this is, to make them whole against the impact of inflation.
You want to take them all together? All right, motion to approve. Second. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 4.
All right. Item 4 is consider approval of South Central Regional Transit District SCRTD Transit Project amendments to the RMS 2050 MTP and RMS 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program Tip 2A, program the vehicle fleet purchase fiscal year 22 5307 project using Federal Transit Administration 5307 fiscal year 2022 apportionment funds in fiscal year 2023. That's a mouthful. B, program the capital maintenance fiscal year 22 5307 project using FTA 5307 fiscal year 2022 apportionment funds in fiscal year 2023. C, program the bus purchase fiscal year 23 5307 project using FDA 5307 fiscal year 2023 apportionment funds in fiscal year 2023. D, program the capital maintenance fiscal year 23 5307 project using FTA 5307 fiscal year 2023 apportionment funds in fiscal year 2023. E, program the planning fiscal year 23 5307 project using FTA 5307 fiscal year 2023 apportionment funds in fiscal year 2023. And F, program the security equipment fiscal year 23 5307 project using FTA 5307 fiscal year 2023 apportionment funds in fiscal year 2023. Again, these are funds that are going to the South Central Regional Transit District that operates mostly in the state of New Mexico, but with some really good connections into the state of Texas. David Admijo here as the executive director is here to answer any questions.
Any questions? Is there a motion, Mr. Chair? Pardon me? Move to approve. Second. There's a motion and a second to approve, take them all at once. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5, sir.
Thank you. Item 5 is consider approval of amendment to the fiscal year 2022-2023 Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP, to add Sun Metro Rising Project to Subtask 2.4, Access to Essential Services. We have somebody here from Sun Metro. Claudia? That's Claudia Garcia from Sun Metro.
Good morning, everybody. Claudia Garcia, Assistant Director for Planning and Development at Sun Metro. We are respectfully asking for your approval to add this project to the list of the UPWP for the fiscal year 2023. This is, last year, the FTA released some funds for a grant under the American Rescue Plan. which has to do with the route restoration. Sun Metro Rising is a project that we're doing with consultants, and they're doing a comprehensive analysis of the entire system. In order for us, we were awarded late last year, and in order for us to be able to use these funds, these projects needs to be part of the UPWP 2022-2023. This is the reason why we're asking to be added to it. It's not changing any projects, it's not adding any expenses, it's just an opportunity for us to use those additional funds that we were able to secure. Is a $450,000 grant.
Any
Do you have any
questions?
questions?
Chair, it seems like we might have someone signed up for public comment for item number 4, is that right? Is someone here to speak on item number 4?
They're on 5.
Oh, we're on 5 now?
No, we're on item 5.
Okay, so
Anybody want to?
disregard.
There's nobody there. Is there a motion to approve? Yes, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you so
Softly,
much.
but it passed.
All right, moving on to item number 6, consider approval of the fiscal years 2024-2025 UPWP. And we have Harrison Plord here with the presentation.
Good morning, Chair, board members. Harrison Plord with El Paso MPO. Through this item, we are requesting your approval for the fiscal year 2024-2025 UPWP. This is the new program that will replace the current. It would go into effect on October 1st of this year. We have committed or completed a 30-day public comment period. We held 2 public meetings during that period, one hybrid on May 23rd, one that was virtual only on June 8th. Attendance was low, but not 0, so that's all right. We did not receive any public comments during the public comment period. We did receive some comments from New Mexico DOT about minor text edits, and we did make those changes in the final draft of the document. The presentation that was presented during the public meetings included in the backup for this item, as well as a link to the actual draft document. We don't have really major changes that we're making to the list of tasks and subtasks that we're planning for this new program. But if you do have any questions, then please ask them.
And when you have low attendance, it means there's not a lot of controversy. So that was good. Any questions? No questions, motion to approve. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 7.
All right, item 7 is consider authorizing the executive director to sign a letter of support for Project Amistad's application to TxDOT's fiscal year 2023 and 2024 FDA 5310 Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Call for Projects. We have here somebody from Project Amistad if you have any questions. But of course, staff supports the request for the letter.
Any discussion? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve item 7. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, so now moving on to reports and discussion. For item number 8, we have Bridge of the Americas, BOTA, Land Port of Entry, Modernization, Enhanced Feasibility Study. And we have here Mr. Charlie Hart from the General Services Administration. After his presentation, we have a couple of other speakers that we'd like to invite also and have some discussion on this item. So Charlie?
Scavo, before we start that, I don't want to interrupt anyone in the middle of the presentation, but I may have to leave before the meeting's over. So I would like to appoint, with your all's permission, I'll need to take a vote, Mayor Miller to continue and chair the meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? We'll continue in online. Thank you all. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor. Charlie?
Okay, thank you, Eduardo. And I want to thank you for inviting me to give you an overview of the study that's currently underway for the Bridge of the Americas Land Port of Entry inspection facilities. This is a really exciting project. And in fact, Eduardo was the first person that I called when I found out that we would receive funding to modernize and expand the Bridge of the Americas. All right, so next slide. So here's what I'll talk about. You can't ignore the history and background of the Bridge of the Americas or the Chamazal. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll give them an overview of the project, the scope of the project that we envision, the current status, schedule. The site has proven to be challenging, and I want to go into a little bit of detail about that. I want to discuss potential approaches. Talk a little bit about community engagement, because we really are expecting the community of El Paso to steer us as we go through this project. And then this project presents actually tremendous opportunities as well as challenges for all of us. All right, next slide. So the Chamazal Treaty is often misunderstood. And so anyone associated with this project really has to understand the treaty itself. There's an urban legend that trucks weren't specifically mentioned in the treaty, and that's true. Trucks weren't specifically mentioned, but they weren't prohibited. But the fact is that the Bridge of the Americas will remain toll-free, and as long as trucks cross that bridge, we have an obligation to inspect the trucks. But a lot of my assumptions about this project have been challenged as we go forward. Anyway, but the last time this project was constructed, originally in 1967, those were the first inspection facilities at the Bridge of the Americas. We haven't done anything to it since 2003. We've done minor patch jobs. It's long overdue for a project. And we've done a number of at least 3 studies that I know in the last 20 years to try to encourage Congress to fund this. So we were very excited when we finally got the resources to do something about this outdated port of entry. Next slide. So the goals, we want to fully modernize and if possible expand the port of entry. We really need to improve CBP operations at the port. And actually CBP's operational concepts are changing rapidly as they integrate modern technologies. We're going to be designing and constructing pretty much all of the infrastructure at the existing port, try to make it more efficient for pedestrians, passenger vehicles, buses, and port trucks. We're going to phase construction, so the port, we intend to keep the port open during construction. So the construction period is going to be longer than what it could have been if we just completely shut it down and then modernized it. All right, next slide. So the National Environmental Policy Act requires us to do due diligence and make sure we fully assess the environmental impact of major projects. And initially, one of our assumptions was that, well, this is going to be an environmental assessment because we've studied it enough in the past. But after engaging the community and finding out some of the concerns, in particular about air quality, we've decided to do a full environmental impact statement. And that's underway right now. The first public scoping meeting for the environmental impact statement is tentatively scheduled for the 29th of this month. But has not been entered in the Federal Register yet. It could possibly be delayed, but certainly in the next few weeks, we'll have our first public scoping meeting, and there will be multiple meetings following that to make sure that we get full comment from the community before we go forward. We're meeting with a number of community leaders representing various interests throughout the community. And one thing we have learned is that there's no single entity that speaks for the entire city or county of El Paso. There are many voices, like all great cities. It's difficult reaching consensus, but we're going to try to achieve that with this project. We're hoping that this project is something that can bring the community together. The enhanced feasibility study kicked off last fall. We expect it to be completed in September, and the design will commence upon completion of that. The purpose of the enhanced feasibility study is to identify a preferred alternative that we can pursue. And I want to mention that all options are on the table, and even the latest alternative that tends to be the one that the community can support the best, even that has undergone some recent revisions after one of the inspection agencies came to us and said, hey, can you move this here? And so we're going to do that. We want to discuss potential approaches, environmental issues. There are many small business opportunities, and we've started to engage the small business community so they can anticipate this, even though it's several years away before we'll be hiring construction contractors on this. And as well, the community concerns. And I want to mention that we will not begin construction of this project until the full environmental impact statement is completed. The entire process is completed. But we may do a lot more engagement. We may do a lot more design. We may come up with more alternatives. We're continually tweaking this throughout. Next project. Next slide. Okay, at the next slide. So our next slide talks about the schedule. Right now, we expect construction to be completed by 2031. So this is a long-term relationship between the federal government and the community of El Paso as we go through discussions, the design, the environmental analysis, and then ultimately construction of the new port of entry. And this is the current schedule. We're under some pressure. The Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Mayorkas, has specifically contacted us and said the schedule that you're presenting is unacceptable to us. We need to have a fully modernized port much sooner than what you're suggesting here. So we're working behind the scenes, trying to look at ways that we can expedite the delivery of this. One of them would be to completely shut down the port, which I understand is kind of unacceptable to the interest in the community. But we're presenting all those alternatives to him and then trying to figure out what's next. So understand there's tremendous pressure for us to go faster, but right now this is the best schedule that we can come up with. Next slide.
You gotta start talking about it automatically.
Okay. All right. I want to talk about some of the considerations. This is a landlocked site, and I don't have to tell you that because you're all from the community. This is more, in the center of the picture here is the existing land port of entry. We're bound by highways on both sides, and to the north, we're bound by the actual Bridge of the Americas and Mexico to the south. The Chamazal National Memorial Park is off limits, so we can't expand in that direction. There are a number of people who live in residential neighborhoods. There's the Paisano Green Senior Housing Complex recently constructed just to the east of us. There's the County Coliseum, San Javier neighborhood. I can tell you, everyone who abuts the boundaries of the existing site has a reason why we should not expand into that direction. But I go back to one of our previous studies. In 2008, we actually got a formal request from the city and county of El Paso to consider segregating the commercial traffic from the pedestrian and passenger vehicles. We can't do that without expanding to the east. So that's one of the things that we're engaging community leaders and continually talking about throughout the environmental impact statement process, find out what makes the most sense for the community. All right, next slide. So, and again, we've come up with 4 approaches right now, and there are infinitely more that we could come up with as we engage the community and talk to leaders within the community. We're continually changing this as well, but we could use the existing site. It would be multi-level facilities, and I'll talk about that. And that's the one that appears to have the best reception within the community so far. or we could acquire some land to accommodate future growth and move some of the commercial secondary inspection facilities to the east. Or we could acquire a lot of land, in the area of the county coliseum, and enable complete segregation of commercial facilities from the passenger vehicle and pedestrian facilities. And then another alternative, which we initially rejected because we do not have authority to not have commercial inspection facilities available. But if we eliminated all commercial vehicle inspection facilities, there's a considerable element within the community who would be in favor of that. The problem is right now, though, as long as trucks cross the Bridge of the Americas, Customs and Border Protection and federal motor carriers are obligated to inspect those trucks, and we have to provide facilities for that. But we're going to leave that alternative on the table and engage in discussions and continue to pursue that as a goal if it's at all possible. But at the moment, it's not possible. But I can say right now, we're not committed to any particular approach. We just wanted to throw that out there and have the discussion within the community continue. Next slide. This is the alternative. We're calling it Alternative 1A, where we use the existing site to the maximum extent possible. This particular alternative does not acquire any county property. It has a little bit of site acquisition, a little bit of land acquisition from existing state-owned property for the Department of Public Safety inspection facility just to the east. But it basically involves secondary inspection of trucks in what is now the Texas DPS facility to the east, and everything else is on the existing site. And on the next slide, I have a picture of what that might look like. The basic concept is that pedestrians would cross in what would be a tunnel underground the existing street level, and what is now underground the existing street level, but it'll be skylit, so it's not going to be a dungeon type of tunnel. But pedestrian processing would occur what is now underground. And then passenger vehicles and buses would be inspected at what is now the surface level of the ground. And then trucks would be inspected at an elevated level above the entire facility. And it's illustrated with an architect's rendering right here. And this particular alternative appears to be the one that gets the most support in the community right now. And actually, Customs and Border Protection likes this one because it's a more efficient way. It enables Customs and Border Protection to move its officers around from one function to the other. So this one appears to be the one that's most amenable, and also requires the least acquisition of land. But at the same time, we're still leaving trucks in the facility, and there's an element in the community who just can't live with that. Next slide. So community engagement is probably the most important aspect of this particular project. In fact, just this week, there's a group in Washington, D.C. who wants to study community engagement in El Paso and see what lessons learned we can gather from that as a best practice for the federal government. So El Paso is in the spotlight of the federal government for community engagement, and they're using this project as a way to see how do we do things and how can we do things better. So the NEPA scoping process, as I mentioned, the public scoping meetings are occurring this summer and will continue throughout the next year probably. I will brief the Bridges Steering Committee for the city of El Paso every month, or I'll participate in that meeting and I'll brief as requested. We're going to have formal community engagement meetings. We've had 4 of them so far. The first one, sponsored by Representative Escobar, was in this room. The others were in the Chamizal Recreation Center so that people in the community could actually walk to the meeting. And we'll continue to do that to try to inform people about the project and, more importantly, to listen to the needs of the community as we go forward. Annually, there's a forum called the Binational Bridges and Border Crossing Group that meets, where we meet with our Mexican counterparts to formally inform them about projects along the southern border, and that will continue. and as well as the Joint Advisory Committee on Transportation Issues, also called the JW, Joint Working Committee, excuse me, that should be Joint Working Committee on Transportation Issues, also known as the JWC. That body will continue to inform our Mexican counterparts about it and try to see if they can have companion projects, because one reason why I'm talking to the MPO is we realize you can't build something without impacting everybody else. And so it has to be a highly collaborative process with everybody who may be impacted and who can either help or hurt your project. Semi-annual, actually just last week, I gave a similar presentation to the U.S.-Mexico Joint Advisory Committee on Air Quality with an emphasis on the EPA's concerns about air quality in the Paso del Norte region. And as requested, like today, I'm happy to talk about the project, or Daniel Partida, who's a resident of El Paso, is our project manager. His entire project team is here in El Paso. They're available at any time to talk to the community about the project, or to anyone who wants to discuss the project. Next slide. So we have a number of challenges. I mentioned the site constraints, scope and budget alignment. Like all projects, we are concerned about inflation. The cost estimate that we delivered for this was developed in 2018. I don't anticipate that we'll get additional money. Right now, we're expecting between $650 million and $700 million to be the total project cost of this. Aligning the community priorities is very, very important for this. As I mentioned, no single entity talks for the entire community, although the reason that I called Eduardo first is I rely very heavily on the MPO. I think the MPO probably has the best perspective of what's in the community's interest long-term in terms of transportation and infrastructure. So I rely very heavily on him, but that's not the only source. There are many other sources that we want to rely on. Many environmental concerns, all right? There are tribal interests at stake here. There are air quality concerns. There are water quality concerns. There are health risks. And the president has recently issued an executive order on environmental justice. It's his third executive order on environmental justice. And this one actually requires us being GSA, to actually actively reach out and listen to people who may have a concern about the project. It's not enough to passively wait for people to come to us. We have to try to identify anyone who might have a concern or be impacted by this project. And we're taking that very seriously, and we expect to do it. If we have to acquire any property for this project, the federal process for acquiring land takes a long time. That could delay the project. So that's presenting certain challenges. We have a number of site acquisition people who are working behind the scenes actively to make sure that that doesn't delay the project. And then finally, the construction has to be phased because the port of entry is going to remain open during the construction period. And that presents certain challenges with the technical solutions that we come up with. But as well as challenges, next slide. There are also many opportunities. All right, the current administration is actually using its infrastructure program to carry out many of the initiatives, in particular addressing climate change and low carbon materials and the carbon footprint. And this is no exception. There's an opportunity for us to deliver a LEED gold facility. In fact, the last port of entry delivered by Daniel Partida, our project manager for this project, ended up being a LEED platinum, the very first LEED platinum land port of entry on either border of the United States was in Columbus, New Mexico. And we have members of that project team have been put onto this project specifically to make this a very green facility. Also, very exciting times, as you know, all the transportation geeks know that there are emerging technologies, automated driving systems, connected driving systems. There's a lot of smart vehicle things happening, electric cars, all those kind of things. when you look at the life cycle of this project, I anticipate a lot of changes throughout the project as we try to integrate the latest technology. But we're not going to do it if it doesn't make the actual process, the actual mission of the port more efficient. It's also a great opportunity for us to engage the community. I've enjoyed meeting elements of the El Paso community that I otherwise never would have met. And so rather than being the distant federal government, we tried to integrate the federal government into the needs of the community as well. So it's a great opportunity for us to change the relationship between the federal government. Representative Escobar often talks about how it's easy to be forgotten from Washington, D.C., and she's doing a great job in trying to make sure that doesn't happen. And this project is an opportunity to encourage that relationship as well. And finally, there are many small and disadvantaged business opportunities. There's a real push for us to reach out to underserved communities who haven't done federal work before and try to include them in all of our projects. Next slide. I think that just about wraps it. Okay, there are other relevant activities. Yeah, we have to collaborate very closely with TxDOT and with the MPO. We've been specifically tasked with pursuing low embodied carbon materials and incorporating them into this project. We have a number of other work going on at Santa Teresa and San Jeronimo. There's a high priority project being studied in that area as well that may reduce some of the commercial vehicle pressure from this port of entry. We're also engaged with University of Texas El Paso's air quality assessment report for the Bridge of the Americas employees, and we're engaging them. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, the community leader meetings are very important to the success of this project. Next slide. So we have a public-facing website, and we even have a Spanish language fact sheet on the project to make sure that people stay abreast of the latest developments of this project. And so when you see the presentation, there's a link to our publicly facing website, or you can go to gsa.gov and Google the BIL infrastructure projects and arrive at the Bridge of the Americas and get all the latest information about the schedule, public meetings, anything that's happening with this. Next slide. And this is SAM.gov is the system for award management. For anyone interested in doing business with the government, they can find out about opportunities, particularly this one. Any opportunities associated with this project will be posted on SAM.gov. And that's all I have. Next slide. My contact info is here. Daniel, I should have put Daniel Partita, our project manager, who's located here in El Paso. You'll see him again. He's actively engaged on this throughout the project. But let me open it up for questions or discussion. Yes, sir.
I have a question. You say you're in the middle of your environmental process period. Does that process, and I noticed on your next to last slide there, you called out San Jeronimo and Santa Teresa as specific target interaction. What about Zaragoza and the Tornillo Bridge? Any adjustments you make on the Bridge of Americas is going to affect the other bridges in town. So is there any thought to looking at this as a more comprehensive study of our area, or that's beyond your charge?
I'll say yes to both questions. You know, I can't help but think about a system of bridges in El Paso and how this project fits into that. But our task is specifically just the inspection facilities at the Bridge of the Americas land port of entry. So the project itself only involves the boundaries of the land port of entry. But I'm personally involved. I'm the Southern Border Executive for GSA. So I'm personally involved at Zaragoza, you know, the Freight Shuttle Express project, you know, involved there. The Tornillo, I participated in the Chamber of Commerce visit for the connector road south of the Tornillo land port of entry. I looked at the construction. I realized that it's under now. And yeah, that's all part of it. But I lean very heavily on this group, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, as the transportation planners for El Paso, to tell me what makes the most sense. And then we'll try to integrate that into the project.
Can you tell us more about your thought process on keeping the bridge open while you're trying to do this work versus just cold turkey, get it done and open it back?
I mean, why do we think we need to leave it open?
You
I
feel
think-
like that's already been. a
Yeah,
decision.
well, GSA exists for the federal agencies that exist in our buildings. And so when we turn to particular Customs and Border Protection, they said shutting the port down wasn't an option. You know, they said
What
that
their thought process was?
but why shutting it down wasn't an option.
I guess the reason it would be an interesting data point to see where people would naturally trend without that bridge. Just to see what the dynamics would be in the community. Where would they go? What bridge would they use? I mean, that would be a really valuable data set that we could get just on our side. And also from a construction point of view, things always go better when you have a clean site than trying to, work around.
Yeah, I like the way you think. And in fact, during construction, there will be one phase where there's no commercial traffic. And that phase could be as long as a year. And I'm very excited to see what happens when there's no commercial traffic for, while we're constructing the commercial facilities. But as far as actually doing it right now, nobody is telling us that that's something that we should do.
Well, I'm in the field, and I know from a construction standpoint, if you were talking to whoever's building it, they would ask you to do that. But,
Restraint.
Yeah.
contractor.
I realize. The engineer in me would love
I
that.
think to your budget point, it drives your cost up to do it the way you're proposing. And if you're already facing a budget shortfall, I'm just wondering if that option is on the table.
It's not on the table right now, but I'll take that back. And
It would save you money.
yeah, we realize that.
Well, that's my side.
Yeah, and actually, it would also expedite the project. And we have been asked to look at that by Secretary Mayorkas.
Okay.
I have a question. With regard to your feasibility study that you've indicated is going to be completed by September of this year, can we have a preview in terms of what to expect that it's going to contain? What type of information is that going to provide us?
The information, it'll identify at least 3 alternatives that were developed and under consideration, provide a lot of data and information. And ultimately, it'll recommend a preferred alternative that we will pursue. And actually, the information that I gave you right here kind of summarizes what will be in the report. The problem we have is right now, it's federal policy that feasibility studies are an internal document that are not to be shared outside of the federal government. And this is a real pain point, I realize, for Eduardo, because every time we've come up with it, we've say, we can't show it to you. But if you come to the meetings and you take screenshots, you can pretty much put together what is in the feasibility study. But whenever I've asked for permission to share that, even with Representative Escobar, I could not share. Actually, they're actually restricted to the executive branch of the government because it's a pre-decisional document typically used for budgeting. The thing is, though, we already have a budget for this project. We're already funded for this project. And so my argument is that, look, we ought to be as transparent as possible and share it, but I don't have authority to share it with you.
So it's not something that's going to be released to the public based on what you're telling us.
No.
Will we be made aware with regard to the selection of kind of like what you said, the design of it? Will that be made public?
Yes. In fact, when I brief the Bridges Steering Committee monthly, I try to tell them this, just like today, this is what we're leaning. Right now, like if we publish it today, the preferred alternative would be that alternative 1A. That appears to be the one that has the most support in the community right now, the one where we use the existing site. But that will be public information. We'll be talking about it. I just can't reveal the entire report.
And then subsequent to that will be the design, based on the timeline that you provided.
Yes, well, yeah, we plan to start design or finding somebody to do design immediately after we publish the enhanced feasibility study.
Thank you.
So will GSA be drafting out the scope of work, or is that gonna be handled by a third party, or how's the approach gonna be handled? And is it gonna be taken as a whole, or is it gonna be brought out in phases, engineering, design, and then construction? Is it gonna go out to bid? Is GSA gonna put this out to bid?
Yes, okay, so he's talking about how are we going to go about procuring somebody to do the design? The architect we hired to do the feasibility study has actually been tasked with doing a solicitation for an architect to do the design. And so that request for proposal for somebody to design it is going to be completed in September, and that's going to be available. What we haven't decided is what our delivery method is, whether we'll go design build, design bid build, or design build bridging. Internally, we have a number of people who want to let's make sure the design is complete before we start constructing. Other people, particularly because it speeds up delivery, it may be less expensive, want to do design build. My experience with land ports of entry, this is my personal opinion, is design build's not a good idea for land ports of entry because CBP always changes their mind. And design build is very expensive unless you lock in the requirements early. And the other thing I mentioned, all the way technology is changing. There are going to be a lot of changes going forward with the way things are done in land ports of entry. And for that reason, we need to have the greatest flexibility as this project goes forward. Did I answer your question about how we're going to? Okay.
You did. It's still up in the air.
All right.
So the intent, use technology to streamline the process, right? But then also the intent is to add capacity. So your throughput will be increased?
Yes. Originally, the intent was to add capacity because we do anticipate that certainly pedestrian traffic and passenger vehicle traffic is going to increase in the future. The trend for commercial vehicle traffic appears to be declining, but we don't know that for sure until we study it.
And that will be a part of the feasibility study is your throughput projections?
Yes, there's actually going to be, there's a transportation study that is included as part of the feasibility study.
And that type of information will be shared with the city so that we understand how it impacts our local network, TxDOT, how it impacts I-10, because they're currently in the process of redesigning, as you heard, our earlier item, so that we make sure that we're able to, whatever changes are there, we're able to maintain that on our local network.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're participating in the I-10 study as well. We try to, with TxDOT in particular, we are engaged with that too.
If I might just state that we no longer have quorum, so it's my understanding we can listen to information, but we cannot deliberate.
Mr. Chair, a couple of things that I would like to add to Charlie's presentation. So one thing that it took me a little bit of time to understand really is that the GSA's mandate is really the port of entry itself, right? You cannot spend money beyond what you consider the port of entry. Yeah, you can acquire, but some of the discussions that we had earlier is like, are you considering connections to the port of entry, right, to and from, and what coordination are you having with them on the Mexican side and all that? So that is still one thing that we all need to be aware of, that you are focused on the port, right? Although there is a lot of community involvement and all that, but all of us really need to be working together to make sure that yes, you can improve the operation of the port, but if we can't get to the port or get out of the port efficiently, it somehow defeats the purpose, right? So that's one important thing. The other thing that in the discussion about different ports of entry, I don't think we really understand very well the dynamics between the different border crossings, Santa Teresa, Tornillo, Bridge of the Americas, and all that. And this is why it's so important that the work that the MPO is doing right now in developing that international travel demand model, which is going to give us a lot more information to understand really origin, destination, and the choices that truckers and people and people make in terms of selecting which crossing to use. And I'm putting Salvador here from our MPO office on the spot because we're on the tail end of completing the tool, and so that we can start using it, and we hope that we can also use the tool to start informing the process specifically for this project. So Chair, we know we have some public comment, but we also have other speakers that I'd like to invite. So, Sergio, do we take public comment first?
Let's take public comment, and then we can continue with the speakers. And some of the public comment is live, and some of the public comments are videos that were submitted. And so we're going to try and play those. But first, I guess we can call Mr. Bob Storch, provide public comment on this agenda item.
Okay. Again, I'm Bob Storch. I live in Sunset Heights. I think this is a real challenge for you, the MPO, because you are the group that touches on all of these dynamics like nobody else. Like Eduardo says, the ports are not coordinated except where you all come in. You've got New Mexico here. You've got South County. You've got the city. You've got the county. And now you've got the feds. We need to coordinate those ports and the traffic through those ports. And we've got to eliminate the trucks coming across the Bridge of the Americas. It's a free bridge for the people. The people have been pushed out by the trucks. There are neighborhoods that surround this port where the health of those people is in grave danger. The physical structure of those neighborhoods is in danger by all the construction that has gone on those highways. We need to get the trucks and the traffic out of central El Paso, move them to these other ports. It ties in with I-10. Let's get the traffic out of the city. Let's concentrate on the health of our people and the safety of our people. We don't need trucks at this port. Option 4 is the way to go. Thank you.
Ms. Celia Aguilar?
Good morning. We did have a video to share with you. If you could please play that.
Gabby, we can't hear anything.
Try stop sharing and then resharing to make sure that it's sharing with audio. So let me know if it does.
Demandar derechos civiles y que las injusticias ambientales a las que hemos estado sometidos no se sigan ignorando. Nunca hubo un momento en que renunciamos a nuestros derechos civiles. Merecemos el respeto y la atención que otras comunidades, junto con sus familias, se le han prestado. En ninguna otra parte de la ciudad Ciudad del Paso existe una monstruosa planta de reciclaje de metales, baterías y productos electrónicos tan cerca de una escuela primaria. En ningún otro lugar dentro de la Ciudad del Paso existe una instalación de transporte de más de 150 camiones escolares junto en una escuela preparatoria. Sin embargo, EPISD está sometiendo a la comunidad de Chamizal a estos peligros. En el Chamizal estamos viviendo un tiempo muy diferente en comparación con el resto del Paso, al respeto de los derechos civiles y justicia ambiental. Nuestra comunidad ha sido congelada en el tiempo del Paso, cuando no existían leyes ambientales. Existía la segregación y era aceptable colocar una escuela al lado de un ferrocarril y una instalación de reciclaje peligrosa. El tiempo en el Paso cuando existía un sistema de educación pública dual, uno para las comunidades pobres inmigrantes y otra para las comunidades económicamente estables. ¡Fuera la contaminación de nuestro barrio! ¡Fuera! ¡Fuera la contaminación de nuestro barrio! ¡Fuera! ¡Fuera las trocas de nuestro barrio! ¡Fuera! ¿Qué queremos? ¡Justicia! ¿Cuándo? ¡Ahora! ¿Qué queremos? ¡Justicia! ¿Cuándo? ¡Ahora!
So we share this with you so that you can see the faces of the people that are directly impacted by these decisions. So you can see the conditions that our children deal with on a daily basis, living in a community that's disproportionately affected by contamination. There's no other neighborhood in El Paso that has a bridge in their backyard. 79, there's actually, the Chamizal community is exposed to 79% more diesel particulates than the rest of the city because of its proximity to the Bridge of the Americas. We want the trucks out of our community. We want our children's health to be considered. We want to create a safe environment for them to grow up in. We don't want the trucks. We don't want a plan that's going to increase commercial vehicles and increase cancer risks and increase respiratory issues.
Semeli Gaslan.
Hi, good morning. My name is Semeli de Aslan, and I am a member of the Familias Unidas del Chamizal Neighborhood Association. I'm a mother and resident of Barrio Chamizal. My child currently attends Guillen Middle School. Just really quickly, can I have a show of hands? How many public health experts are in the room? So if they were here, they would say that the trucks are killing us. That's what the public health experts are saying. The trucks are killing us. We haven't had clean air for 26 years. That's a quote from Chief Robles of your fire department regarding the fire station in Barrio Chamizal. You know, they don't let them jog outside. But I'm here to talk about my children, my community, the residents that are getting impacted, right? But it's concerning that even those, our first responders aren't even considered. For 26 years, we have not had clean air. I want to repeat, because the narrative is super important. This money's coming from the historic environmental justice initiatives of our President Biden. Say this is to modernize the port of entry to address the environmental injustice that has never been addressed in this community. But everyone keeps calling it an expansion. That's not the word that we should be focusing on. We should be prioritizing the children's health, this community, talking about the health and environmental impacts. When we talk about what this plan should be, renovation should be mitigation. Get the trucks out, prioritize our people. That's what this is meant to be. When I looked at the executive orders from President Biden, that's what it said it would be. When I looked at the infrastructure bill, that's what it said it would be. But that's not what I'm hearing. None of the alternatives that have been presented to us work for this community. You know, people like to call our history an urban legend, right? Because we're Chicano, Mexican, Mexican-American, Spanish-speaking, brown. We know that El Puente Libre was built for the people and not for the trucks. get the trucks out. And some of you, given you're not public health experts, but you're at the front of what's happening in our community, right? When they say a NEPA environmental impact statement, that does not make me feel any better. Because guess what? A statement is not an assessment. What we're asking for is a full and independent environmental and health impact study. The study needs to include the community. What NEPA, what they're gonna do right now, what they're saying, they're just gonna assess the impact of their construction in those years they're constructing. Not what it's gonna do to the community. We demand that the trucks get out, and that's the only alternative that's going to work for us. Thank you.
Brittany Medellin. Please, just a quick reminder that all public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning. We can go ahead and play the video first.
Asking the government to do those critical assessments before they do an expansion, because this expansion is not about efficiency. It's just about adding more traffic. Everybody that knows about what the TechStar did, that they did the expansion, we all know what's happening there. We have lines and lines and lines of trucks idling in front of an elementary school. Particulate matter doesn't go away. It stays in the air for days. So if you don't see those trucks and you put those kids out there when they're playing, they're breathing in all that lead, right? And it travels miles, especially the ultrafine particles that are being pushed out from these trucks, they travel into our community.
Hello, my name is Brittany. I am also a member of Familias Unidas with Chamizal. As you all have seen, some of these health concerns and these health issues are not negotiable for this community. It might be for people who are making decisions that are not going to be directly impacted by this, and who on the other hand will get a paycheck and profit off of it, but it's not negotiable for the people in those communities. And then people also claim that they host community events, when a lot of times, if you all have been to those, you all realize that there isn't even, a lot of times, Spanish accessibility. Having a link on the website is not enough, especially to a community that doesn't have as much access to computers. So that's just one small point on the inaccessibility that this BOTA process has been to the community. Decisions are always being made by the people who are not going to be directly impacted by them, and this is part of this is a historic neglect. This isn't anything new. It's something that's very intentional. And the people of the Chamizal who have multiple areas of contamination, not just the trucks, but the trucks are a huge focus because of that particular matter. Like Ila mentioned in the video, particulate matter doesn't leave the air. It stays and it lingers. And if you have children whose bodies are barely developing, this impacts their brain, their lungs, their heart, their eyes. It impacts every single part of their body. So this isn't just false promises of maybe in the future there won't be trucks. That's not enough. It's not enough because it's happening right now, and this is a health crisis right now. It's not enough to hear false promises of in the future. And hearing that, oh, there can be no commercial trucks for a year while it's building, then it's not impossible. We can get the trucks out, right? If you're able to eliminate that for at least a year, then, you know, maybe we can just eliminate them overall. So yeah, it's not enough. These things are not negotiable. And then what are we doing different given the non-attainment that exists here in El Paso, right? So supposedly as it is, EPA standards are not up to par, but anyways, it's not negotiable, our health concerns. Thank you.
And that concludes public comment, Chair.
Excuse me, I had signed up for public comment outside on the list that you had for the sign-up sheet.
What's your name, ma'am?
Cynthia Renteria.
You're, yes, yes, you did. You're somewhere else on the list, but you're there. So
Okay,
we have
thank
one more
you.
public speaker.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Dr. Cynthia Renteria, and I am reading a statement on behalf of the South Central Neighborhood Associations, which include the Washington Delta Neighborhood Association, San Juan Neighborhood Association, and Corbin Zambrano. Our neighborhoods are located east of the Bridge of the Americas, or BOTA. We are not against the modernization of the port of entry. However, we are extremely concerned about the impact the proposed alternatives will have on our quality of life and on the health of residents living in the community. From the beginning of this project, our associations, along with our neighbors that live to the north of BOTA, San Javier, that live to the west of BOTA, Chamizal, and you just heard from them, have asked the GSA to consider staying within the existing footprint, to remove the commercial traffic, and to respect historical structures such as the County Coliseum. As we've learned more about the project, we're also asking for a community health impact study to better understand the impact not only of this project, but of the current traffic on the environment and on our health. We're opposed to the four alternatives as presented, although alternative 1A is closer to what we've been asking for, but it does not provide a clear path to relocate the commercial traffic. Earlier this year, CBP diverted commercial traffic away from BOTA to other ports of entry during the migrant surge. This shows that it's possible to find an alternative route for commercial traffic. We realize that this means the trucking industry will need to shift and adapt, and that this won't happen overnight. We've also been informed by GSA that the State Department will have to facilitate the conversation about moving the commercial traffic. We feel that the time to start those conversations and start the planning to make that shift is now. It doesn't make sense to have the traffic build up in the middle of the city when there are other options, other ports of entry, where this type of traffic will not impact residential areas. Furthermore, we understand that the focus of this body is carrying out the provisions of federal regulations regarding metropolitan transportation and planning and programming, but we are here today to remind you that there is a people factor, that real lives stand to be affected by this project over the long term. And you heard Mr. Hart mention earlier that community engagement is going to steer this project, and we hope that that's true. We hope to work together to find a solution that considers the impact on residents, all residents living around the BOTA, our health and our quality of life, as well as one that facilitates commercial trade at a different port of entry. Thank you so much.
All right. Mr. Chair, though, there's a comment here that came via text message, so I'm going to go ahead and read it now. My name is Veronica Carvajal. I'm an attorney at the Rio Grande Legal Aid. I represent the communities closest to the Bridge of the Americas, both on the U.S. side. These are the environmental justice communities of San Javier and Barrio Chamizal. I have also met with residents from the Washington Delta Neighborhood Association. Attached, please find the comments we submitted to the GSA on April 12, 2023 on behalf of these communities and in regards to the $600 million project to modernize the BOTA. Please distribute them to each member of the Transportation Policy Board. My clients are requesting the following. 1, the removal of commercial traffic from the BOTA going north and south. 2, measures that will result in reducing air pollution, including but not limited to an investment in public transportation on the BOTA and on both sides of the port of entry, similar to what is being used in Tijuana and San Diego border and other international ports throughout the world. In order to be effective, such an investment must be tailored to the needs of the current users of the BOTA, which necessitates surveying that particular population. 3, a comprehensive environmental health assessment of the residents of the communities of San Javier, Barrio Chamizal, and Washington Delta, which have been most impacted by the air pollution, noise pollution, the heat island effect, and traffic caused by BOTA, and 4, a pre-assessment of the conditions of the homes surrounding the BOTA prior to any demolition and construction activities surrounding the port, and a prohibition of the use of heavy machinery and activities that are known to cause damage to residential structures. TxDOT failed to do this prior to the I-10 Connect project, and the homes in and around the project were damaged. 5, the closure of Zavala Elementary to prevent further exposing young children to air pollution, which is even closer to the Boda southbound traffic than before. Thank you, Veronica Carvajal.
I think that concludes public comment now.
So in addition to Charlie Hart, we also have a couple of people that I would like to introduce. We have Marian Kotkowski Baca from the TECMA Group, if you want to come forward.
Thank you, Eduardo. My name is Miriam Baca-Kotkowski. I am president of the Transportation Division of TECMA Group. You see our trucks in the highways. But I hear loud and clear what's happening in the community. And I think this is a big problem and it goes deeper. If we would imagine an earthquake falling to Ciudad Juarez, what would happen to El Paso's economy? It's a region. We are dependent. For every 10 manufacturer workers in Ciudad Juarez, there's one in El Paso. We need to go even further. What's happening with after COVID? And everybody that reads the news hear about the nearshoring, the nearshoring. What is the nearshoring? Well, who's the biggest consumer of the world? The United States. So the freight from China to the United States has become very expensive. So what's happening? Companies are coming near the consumer. Where's that? In the strip of the border with Mexico. Mexico is our #1 trade partner with the United States. Now here's the other bang. What is the percentage of trade moved by trucks? Anybody knows? 80%. So I hear this and I completely agree. I'm a mother. I'm also an environmentalist, believe it or not. Our fleet is a SmartWay fleet. We cross through Laredo, we cross through Tijuana and Otay, and we cross through Ciudad Juarez, about 150 loads a day. And we use 3 ports. We use Santa Teresa, we use Isleta, and we use Córdoba. And I would challenge the GSA, and thank you for your presentation, Daniel, that before you touch Córdoba, you expand those 2 bridges on the sides, because Santa Teresa has 3 lanes. There's no way that we can take that load. Tornillo has 3 lanes that don't use. There's no way that we can expand that load. Isleta is landlocked, has only 8 lanes, and it's 4 to 5 hours of idling in the lane. So yes, we need better flow, and yes, we need to reduce those trucks. How? I would challenge again the MPO and GSA. We need to reach Mexico. Those lines that we saw on those videos are going into Mexico. Why? 2 lanes, low technology, lack of people. What can we do to be a good neighbor? So those are the challenges that we are here. Córdoba, reducing Córdoba, shutting up Córdoba, it's kind of like cutting a vein of your system. Can you cut a vein that is impacting other veins? Well, we need to do something for it in order to cut it. And if we have 12 lanes in Tornillo and 12 lanes in Santa Teresa, with the arteries from Mexico to the United States going in, Yes, we probably could do it. That was the thought when they created Isleta. And look what happened with Isleta. Everybody's there. Is the main manufacturing crossing lane, Isleta. And Isleta community is probably also has a lot to complain because those lanes going into Mexico after 5 o'clock are impossible. You just go to Pan American and you'll see it. Santa Teresa is getting the same way. So where is the problem? The problem is with Mexico. We need to face our port directors and our port generals and everything in Mexico, in addition to expanding those ports. I am a proponent of having the Cordova import the port of entry in the US side to be only for empties and fast lanes where we do not have any holdup coming into northbound in the United States. What are we doing with the southbound? We need to face our neighbor. And that's my statement. Thank you.
So again, Ms. Katkowski raises some very, very important points about it's not just about GSA and what happens at the port of entry itself. It's, what happens, we've got to improve that coordination on the Mexican side as well, and both for northbound and southbound. And again, I said it many, many times before, we need to figure out how to improve access to and out of our crossings to make them a lot more efficient. Which brings me to the next point and the next speaker that I'm going to invite, Mario Porras. Where are you, Mario? And this is maybe getting a little bit beyond the topic of the Bridge of the Americas itself, but it really is part of the discussion in terms of what are we doing to improve that coordination between the U.S. side and the Mexican side, between Ciudad Juarez and El Paso, between the states of Texas, New Mexico, and Chihuahua, and so on. So, Mario, you want to just...
Thank you, Eduardo, and the rest of the board members and the public. Mario Porras, I'm a lifelong border resident, whether in El Paso or Juarez. Lived and worked all my life here, heavily involved in all binational affairs in our region and beyond. And there's just so many ideas and comments that I think when it comes to the border, I'd like to express, but I know we're focusing right now here with BOTA, Cordova, Libre, we even cannot coordinate just one single name, right? Everybody has their own different names for all our ports, but I think that's part of the coordination that we need to work. BOTA right now, BOTA remodeling, renovation, expansion, however we want to call it right now, I think it both excites me a lot and can bring some concerns as well. This is, I think, once in a more than 1 or 2 generations project that we have. I would encourage everybody here and beyond this room that one of the things that I think we're missing is also coordinating and having more of a border vision. Everywhere you turn around, we are in the middle of the U.S.-Mexico border pretty much. And we're almost 500 miles away from the next big city, from the next big region, whether you turn south, north, east, or west. So for me, there's really just a reason to find better ways to work together between El Paso, Juarez, and Doñana. Obviously, that heavily involves our ports of entry, but it's not only commercial, it's vehicles, it's pedestrians, it's alternative transportation, whether it's bikes, scooters, whatever even if in the future we can think again of having a binational trolley. So again, I just want to put on the table that we need to have this more of a regional mentality, again, starting with our ports of entry, but like Eduardo mentioned, I think it's also the whole border infrastructure, whether it's the streets that are leading to our ports of entry or when we exit our ports of entry. If anything, actually, I see Isleta and our downtown system of bridges, they're actually even more landlocked than Bridge of the Americas. So actually, If anything, this project, we really need to try to think the best way that we can help it to for our region. Again, not only in El Paso, but Juarez as well, which has a little bit more of land surrounding the port, either on the U.S. or the Mexican side. Isleta and downtown are even worse. You know, we have our local streets right after our port on each side of the bridge. I also want to, I don't know if this is the right moment, Mr. Hart, but on the design phase of this project, but also what can we do to think a little bit outside the box? Again, it's a once in a lifetime or 2 generations opportunity to improve Bridge of the Americas. Do we want to increase different ideas, whether we have like 1 or 2 different lanes? You know, Tijuana San Diego has a medical tourism lane. Do we want to think about like a southbound Century lane? This is our moment to think as a region and really come with some ideas that would increase our competitiveness with other border regions. And that brings me to what Miriam said. I echo a lot of her comments and the public comments as well. But this nearshoring effect that we're seeing, and everybody will tell you, it's going to have changes. It's going to bring changes in the, I would say, economically in the positive way, not only to El Paso Juarez, but other border regions. And we will be, or we already are in this friendly competition with other border regions. So what can we take this project and think a little bit to make us more competitive? I would definitely echo Eduardo's comments on this is a project to improve the actual port of entry, the inspection process of BORA, but we definitely need to consider, again, the surroundings of our port of entry. Like we're seeing right now, even after the TxDOT project, I forgot the name, you know, that connected 54 to 375, you know, we see these problems on traffic jams, eastbound, westbound, and southbound Bridge of the Americas, and we definitely need to address this if we can take this project as an opportunity. Touching on the regional basis, on the regional project, actually the investment that BORA is going to receive, that trigger some initiatives on the Juarez side, because Juarez was, I work a lot on the Juarez side with the government and private sector. That trigger in Juarez, hey, El Paso's getting $600 million or more. What are we going to do with the Bridge of the Americas? And this concern is at the local level specifically. Although the locals are involving in state, federal, and the private sector, there's a lot that needs to be done. And we're actually working on bringing together a ports of entry stakeholders from El Paso, Juarez, and Doña Ana together. It seems it's going to be in about 2 weeks. We're working a lot on the date and trying to coordinate a good date for everybody. Eduardo would be able to extend an invitation to all of you, but the idea behind this is to actually start bringing together all the different stakeholders, because Juarez has some ideas, some initiatives that they're already working on, El Paso has some, and Doña Ana has others. But we're not necessarily working together as a region, and like I mentioned before, there are other border regions that are actually working together to present port of entry infrastructure initiatives with our federal governments. So we're starting this initiative where we're trying to bring together these different stakeholders from the public and private sector, from the 3 regions, and trying to, with the idea, first of all, to understand and learn from the different initiatives that are happening on each of the regions, but actually with the goal to start working together more as a region, which is definitely critical, especially for projects like this size, the coordination with Mexico. But we understand this is a good idea of working with Bridge of the Americas, but we also understand that all of our ports need attention. And ideally, if in the future we can take out commercial from Bridge of the Americas, might be a good idea. I'm not opposed to it, but not until we have better access and processes at the extremes of our region, which is Santa Teresa and Tornillo. That's my comment. Thank you.
You see what you started, Charlie? No, just kidding. No, I mean, it is obvious and very clear that these are very complex projects. There's so many different things that we need to consider in terms of the cost-benefit analysis for any project. And, you know, we do that in the transportation field all the time. But this one is a bit more complicated because it does involve more of the binational coordination that Mario was talking about, that I really think we need to improve a lot and work really hard in terms of making all of our binational projects and the community make it more efficient. So I think we've talked a lot about this topic, Mr. Chair. If we can move on to the rest of the reports. And before we do that, Charlie, thanks so much for the presentation. Yeah. No.
Hi there. Good morning, board members and members of the general public. Yes. So item 9 is under reports and discussion is quarterly reports, and there will be 2 presented. A is the June 2023 project completion report, and B is the June 2023 project readiness report. Gabby is going to be doing the actual presentation of these items in just a moment, but just to summarize, each quarter we present to the advisory committee and to this body the progress of projects that have begun during the years 2017 through 2022, and also the readiness of projects that are soon expected to let. Normally, we would also have a summary of the amendments that were made administratively to our transportation improvement program at this time. However, this quarter, there were none, so that is the update. And one note about this quarterly presentation in particular is that due to feedback by this body and by TPAC, we have begun sending the materials and the requests for completion of these quarterly reports together rather than separately as we have done in the past. So this is the inaugural cycle on employing this new streamlined system. And with that, I am going to pass the report to Gabriela Lopez.
Gabriela Lopez with the El Paso MPO. As I mentioned, we're going to be going over both the project completion and project readiness report from the different entities. The full reports are part of the backup documentation, so this presentation only is a summary of those reports. For the project completion report, for which we'll start first, this is the project information for all the projects that are within fiscal years 2017 and 2022. There is a total of 72 projects that were programmed in our TIP, 55 in Texas and 17 in New Mexico. And of those, there's 58% of the projects for these fiscal years have already been completed, and the construction has been completed at 100% and are now open to traffic. 39 have been obligated or are under construction, and we do have a 3% of projects that are still pending, which is only 2 projects from the city of El Paso, we'll see in the next slide. And in terms of construction progress, as we see on the screen, we've also distributed between the projects that are not applicable for construction, 0%, 30% progress, 60, 90, and 100. So we can see that the majority of the projects have been completed or are well under construction. Next, we'll go over the City of El Paso project. So again, this is only from fiscal years 2017 to 2022. 2 of the major projects that we have are our RMS 2020 projects, which are CBD4, Central Business District, and Rojas. For these, we have received an updated status update from the city. For CBD4, they have requested permission from TxDOT to rebid the project, and this request was sent recently, and they anticipate it will take 1 to 2 months for approval, so they do expect the bid opening up again in early November. And for the Rojas widening project, this construction has started January 2023, and so far it remains to be on schedule. We do have 2 projects that are pending Still, the I-10 deck plaza planning study, this is pending the agreement with Federal Highway. The ITS infrastructure has been obligated and construction is estimated to start in August. And the Traffic Management Center upgrade phase 1 had its notice to proceed issued on February 2023. Next, we have the County of El Paso projects. For this one, a major project update is for the Pelicano Drive widening project. On this one, the project is currently on hold due to the default of the contractor, but the CRMA and the county are in discussion with the company for the next steps, and TxDOT has been made aware of this issue. And the other two projects that we have, which are our RMS 2020 projects, the regional transit startups for fiscal years 21 and 22 have been obligated.
Where we talked about upcoming opportunities. Our
Next, we have the City of Socorro projects. We did not receive a response from the City of Socorro for the project completion report. However, the two projects that they have are preliminary engineering projects, so they're for the design of the construction, and both of those projects have been obligated. Next, we have the TxDOT projects. For this, it's a much longer list, but as far as the projects that are marked as part of RMS 2020 projects, all of them have started construction and are at least at 30% progress. We're still pending to confirm with TxDOT regarding the construction estimated completion date from the I-10 widening East Lake to Horizon project. Moving on to our projects in the New Mexico side, starting with Doña Ana County, we do have the Industrial Avenue Grade Separation Project. This one, the NEPA process for the project has been complete and the funds have been obligated. And it is our understanding that they will also be receiving funding for the construction phase of this project. For the city of Sunland Park, we did not receive updated construction completion dates for the Rio Grande Trail project. However, this project has started construction this month. And for the Racetrack Drive project, which is programmed in fiscal year 2017, we were informed by the City of Sunland Park that the project was abandoned due to caution. And lastly, for our New Mexico projects, we have NMDOT's projects. All of the three projects have been obligated, two of which are RMS 2020 projects. The construction is underway for the NM 404 widening project with a 30% complete. And this roadway is partially closed due to the work zone. And for the NM 404 I-10 bridge replacement, that project has been identified as construction being at 100%. However, the contract is still pending to be closed out. And that concludes the completion report of the presentation. Next, we'll go over the project readiness report. And for these, we've only included the projects that have alerts to them. The first being John Hayes, due to the utilities and district review being at 90% during the month of let. However, this project was pushed the let date to July from the last update provided by the county, so the alert would be removed for this report. The next being the North Darrington reconstruction project. This one received a high alert due to the utilities estimated completion date being after the let date, as well as the PS&E estimated completion date being only 2 months prior to the let date, and the district review being only 1 month prior to the let date. However, this project is still scheduled to be letting in the next week. So we will just be confirming with the City of Horizon that this project has let next week for the updated report that will be provided in September. And then we also have SH 178 operational improvements, which is ARCRAFT. This one has a low alert due to the utilities estimated completion date only being 2 months prior to let date. It is recommended that it's at least 3 months. However, for district projects or the TxDOT projects, it is normal for those projects to only have 2 months before the let date for the progress report. And lastly, we've included Nuevo Hueco tanks with an alert. The project timeline still shows the project to be on time based on the latest information provided. However, the high alert was given due to no response being received from the sponsoring entity. So that would conclude the presentation of project completion and project readiness.
I
I have a quick question. On the I-10 widening from State Highway 20 to the New Mexico line, I've received in my office a number of safety concerns at the Art Craft entryway and Paseo del Norte exit. I don't know if you track the number of accidents happening on those two entries and exit from the freeway. I've seen multiple, that's my commute as well, so I just happen to see it, but I've received multiple communications in my office about safety concerns about how those entry and exit ways are being utilized. Is there anything that y'all are doing to monitor that, or things that we can do, or where do we send those concerns? There's been, like I said, been a number of accidents on both those sides. I know that's typical in a construction zone, but it certainly seems, I've been part of a lot of these construction projects, and so this seems to be a little bit more significant than I'm used to. And so would like to see if there's something we can do to address those.
Right.
Representative Booty, you can send those to us. We'll look into it. And we do monitor incidents and accidents.
Okay. Is that something y'all have seen an uptick on in this project?
I can't say for that particular area, but we can look into it.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, just for the sake of time, I think we can skip item number 10. It's the monthly RMS 2020 report, which is a lot of the information is included in the quarterly report discussed in item number 9. So I recommend we skip that. And the information is in your backup material, so if anybody's interested.
And if I might just comment, because it's very, very public, could you comment just on, is there any change in the status of Pelican?
I'm not aware of that, but maybe Norman?
We have Raymond that will be providing the court an update on Monday. I have not heard of any change.
I had the pleasure of driving on it last night.
All right, then let's move on to the last item, the executive director's report. Item number A, which is the RMS 2050 MTP amendments. We were going to let you know that we're going to start the process to amend the plan to accommodate a project in the state of New Mexico, but it seems that we're going to wait to initiate that process until that project gets further along the line. There was a public meeting, and we're talking about the Border Highway Connector. So I think it is best that we wait, we delay the initiating the amendments to the plan until there is a little more certainty on what alternative is going to be selected. B is, we already talked about it with Mario. Item C, the TxDOT Safety Task Force and TTC meetings. Just let you know that I intend to be at the commission meeting next week in Austin to provide comments and see how the fiscal year 24 UTP comes out. So I'll be there in person. And then finally, the TxDOT I-10 corridor study, the binational stakeholders group meeting, which is happening on Monday. The idea of this one is also to bring the stakeholders from the Mexican side to provide input on the on anything related to I-10 and the corridor, and of course, the maquiladora industry, and you heard it from Miriam earlier today, how important that is for the movement of stuff crossing from Mexico as well. In addition, for all the movement of freight coming in from the West Coast, and in addition to us commuters, that I-10 is still the backbone of our transportation system. So with that, that's all I have, and happy to answer any questions on these topics.
Okay, we adjourned some time ago, so. See you.
All right, thank you very much.
No, we don't have to.